Welcome everyone to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host Travis and John. John, how was that?
Man, it was pretty good. I mean, we had some difficulties with recording this go around. No telling what it is. Maybe the 18 forest fires going on.
Man,
who knows? It wasn't as smooth as my balls. That's for sure. With Manscaped, you know.
This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Use code ETP20 at checkout for free shipping and for 20% off. John, how is your manscaping going?
I love the Manscaped, man. If you guys have not got on this bandwagon yet, I'm gonna tell you right now, you need to.
Yeah, Michael Currier, our guest today, he even mentions he bought a Manscaped because of us. He just got a vasectomy, and he said he got a gold star from his urologist for how smooth his balls were. Just a preview of what this conversation's like.
Yeah.
If you guys use code ETP at 20, like I mentioned, you will get free shipping and 20% off. And their performance package is great. Crop deodorant, weed whacker, all the stuff. It's great. So, but this conversation is also very good. Michael Currier has amazing insight. He's a super down-to-earth guy. I mean, it was a great conversation. We were laughing so much, and we really kind of like dig deep into jiu-jitsu in this one, man.
I know. I'd really like to try it at school after hearing him talk about it and the way he holds class. Like, that sounds pretty entertaining.
Yeah, he definitely believes in competing quite a bit, but he doesn't push it on his students. But one cool thing that he has, and he talks about it on the episode a little bit, is he recently posted like a leadership board in the in his academy of people that compete quite a bit, and like the more you compete, the more points you get, the more submissions you get during competition equals more points, and like kind of how he ranks it. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. You guys should check out his Instagram to see the little YouTube or the Instagram short on it. So, but it was a great conversation. Hope you guys like it. Let us know what you guys think about it. John, you got anything else, man?
Oh, nope. Saints won today. Hey, go Saints.
So, you guys, thank you so much for watching and listening at home. Remember, follow us on Instagram, Elbows Tight Pod, Elbows Tight on YouTube, Elbows Tight Podcast everywhere. And give us a 5-star review on iTunes, 5-star review on Spotify, and a 5-star review on Podchaser. That's a new one that you guys can give us a review on. The reason I ask so much is because it lets people know out there that this is a legitimate podcast and they will enjoy listening it too. So thank you guys so much at home, and we'll catch you later. Peace. Like doing something, I'm still like doing something as we're like the countdown's going. I was like, we said we don't have to talk.
We just freeze.
So, Michael Currier, what is up, man? How you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
We are fantastic. It's a beautiful day outside in sunny Washington State.
Sunny, smoky Washington State.
Yeah, we have a bunch of like wildfires going on in I think it's the east part of the state right now, right?
18 forest fires when I checked this morning between Washington and Oregon.
Holy crap.
Man.
Yeah, you might see some on your drive.
Yeah, when it gets smoky up here, the wind just brings all the smoke. Like last night, the moon was orange because of all the smoke and everything like that. So it was crazy to see.
Yeah, I spent 6 years in Portland, and so we had some fires there. And at one point I think I traveled out of the country and came back home, and when we landed, our car was covered in ash. And it gets pretty scary for sure.
Yeah, one year the wildfires in California were so bad, they actually told us to like not go outside for a couple days because the ash was so bad that they're like, look, it's not even safe for you to go outside and breathe, so just don't even go out there. Yeah, you would walk out to your car and it'd be painted in ash. You're like, holy crap, man, this is crazy. So, but you're on your way to California right now. What are you going to do in California?
I'm going to see Splurgio. So Sergio Hernandez, he's a Barrett Yoshida black belt and a pretty rad tattoo artist. So he's done a bunch of my tattoos, and so figured good a time as any to get some tattoos. And so it'll be a 6-hour drive, and then get tattooed, and then drive straight home. So long day.
Heck yeah! How do you? So I obviously have a 1 or 2 tattoos also. How do you recover and train? I've always wanted to ask this, but you're a tattooed guy like me too. How do you train after getting tattooed? Do you take a couple of days off, or do you just like try to train without using that body part?
Yeah, historically, I've always, oh, sorry. That's okay. Can you hear me? You're
That's
good?
all right. You can still talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Sorry. I've got these fucking AirPods and my ear is cauliflowered, and so it wants to fall out all the time. So it's a pain in the So historically, I've taken like, minimum 10 days off after getting tattooed. I'm really cautious about it. When I got my feet tattooed, it was like 4 days before going on a jiu-jitsu trip to Hawaii. And so I broke all my rules. I flew to Hawaii, got off the plane, went straight to the beach, played in the ocean, trained jiu-jitsu all week. And I've got a pretty nasty scar across the tattoo. So, now it's like, I'm pretty strict about it. I stayed nice and tight. I did my neck last July, and that one was super scary just because, lapels are on your neck. And so if you get a big scar on your foot, not a big deal. But if you have a big scarred tattoo across your throat, you look kind of like an idiot. So the goal is to have them look pretty.
Right.
So when you did get your neck tattoo, one, how was that? Because I'm trying to convince my wife to let me do my neck, but she said my mom and my wife are both like no.
Yeah.
But then two, like how long were you like comfortable? Was it the 10 days when you're like, okay, I'll go ahead and do it? Did you still have scabs on it or anything like that?
Yeah. So one, it was the only tattoo I've ever gotten that I was scared of. I think I've gone into every tattoo feeling pretty confident. I've got a lot of work done, and so I was terrified. And it was honestly, it was the easiest tattoo I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah. The worst part, honestly, was just I had to look up for like 5 hours. And as a grappler, my neck is thrashed, and looking up is not my strong suit. And so it was more a matter of just having to apologize to the artist for like having to like stop a second and like roll my neck out and find a good comfortable place to be, because he wanted me to sit up in a chair and just kind of look at the ceiling, and that was rough. So, and then as far as healing goes, I did it right before a trip to Germany to teach, and I think it was two full weeks of no touching it, no training. So when I actually started training, there was no scabs on it anymore. Everything was pretty clean. And so, but yeah, that one was going to be a big concern for me just because I didn't want to even risk anything going wrong with that one.
Yeah, I got the only tattoo that I've gotten since I started jiu-jitsu is just my hand. And that, like you said, like I was a little nervous about my hand because a bunch of people were like, "Oh my god, the top of your hand hurts so bad." I literally like just talked the entire time, and it was so easy. It was so easy. Didn't really hurt at all until probably about the second and 2.5 hours in when he started like getting in there a little bit. I was like, all right, well that's starting to feel uncomfortable. Yeah, but then like for training, I just same thing. I was like, all right, well, I don't really have to worry about anything too much brushing up my hand, maybe just brushing against the mat. But I was super careful. I was so nervous that I was going to rip it out and all the color and whatnot, because I've had a couple where I just got blank spots from scabs falling off and taking everything with it. So, John, you got a couple tattoos too, right?
Bro, my stuff is nothing like your guys'. I got my first one when I was 13, and my mom had to sign parents' permission.
Oh my god!
Back in like 1990. They weren't doing all that great colorful ink and all that stuff back then.
His tattoos are great. It's
they're like prison tats.
Yeah. He's got Godsmack's son around his belly button right
That's
now.
not what that is. It was flatter back then. It's just stretched out. That's all.
So, hey, Mike, for those that don't know you, that are listening at home or watching on YouTube, can you give us a little bit of a background story on who you are and how you got into jiu-jitsu and everything?
Yeah, man. So, for one, I've basically been an athlete my whole life. I've never really had a job. I've been lucky enough to use my talents to make money ever since I was a kid. And so I'm from Ohio, and if you're 5'6" and from Ohio, you have to wrestle. It's like God wrote that down. And so I wrestled for like 10 years growing up. I was also a pretty high-level gymnast. When I was 17, right before college, I was like ranked in the top 10 in the nation for gymnastics. Had an opportunity to do gymnastics for Penn State University, but I got scared and joined the Army instead. And so I served in the U.S. Army. I was a paralegal, basically worked JAG for them. And then outside of the Army, I continued to work as a stuntman and acrobat. Did that most of my 20s. and just kind of side jobs, anything to keep myself from having to punch a clock. So I think in my adult life, I had a job for about 18 months, and that was it. And then 2014, I transitioned to jiu-jitsu full time. Just kind of fell into it. And, I think when you mix wrestling and gymnastics, you get jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like the perfect background for grappling, And so, um, right away for me, I knew it was going to be a full-time thing. So I did my first tournament after about 3 weeks of training and got smashed, but I was hooked. And then I bought my first academy. I had just gotten my blue belt. I think it was about a year into training, and I bought a gym. And from then on, it's been just owning gyms and teaching full time.
So when you first started jiu-jitsu, since you have that wrestling background, did you feel like you're like, oh man, this will be easy because I wrestled for so many years of my life?
Yeah, oddly enough, my first class ever, we were doing double leg takedowns. And so I went into class and I felt super comfortable day one. I was like, oh shit, this is my stuff, for sure. And then then I quickly realized that there was more to it than wrestling. I really think in the beginning, I thought my wrestling would actually hurt my jiu-jitsu. It kind of gave me this false sense of confidence that I knew what I was doing. And then ultimately, you have to understand that in wrestling, there's no such thing as an open class match, right? Like you're only ever wrestling guys your weight. And so I'm 140 pounds, and wrestling does not work so well when you're significantly smaller than somebody, And so I got smashed.
Yeah.
I got smashed a lot. And so I had to really kind of dial back what I was doing with my wrestling and just focus on being a white belt and learning jiu-jitsu. It was only as a pretty advanced purple belt that I began bringing my wrestling back into my jiu-jitsu. It helped me for sure because I grappled with people before, and so having that comfort level of that connection, and then having that comfortableness of just being physical with somebody, I was comfortable with that. So that really helped my progression. But as far as the actual techniques and the skills I learned in wrestling, I don't think they didn't translate very well for me.
Our professor is a lifelong wrestler. He coaches wrestling now, and he's really introduced a lot of wrestling into our jiu-jitsu when it comes to single legs and just these wrestling positions. And one thing that he always talks about is kind of like you just said is jiu-jitsu guys don't really know what to do when they get put in a wrestling position. We have these certain movement patterns that we fall back on that aren't conducive to wrestling sometimes, and vice versa with wrestling to jiu-jitsu. But he does a great job of intertwining these ideas and concepts on this may be a wrestling thing, but this is how we can use it in jiu-jitsu, single leg defenses, attacking from single legs and stuff like that. We just did a whole half guard series where we started on our back in half guard, and it was all wrestling up from half guard, and it was an amazing series. I was like, holy crap, man. And the single leg defense now that he showed us, it's a wrestling, and I hit it every single time someone in my class goes for a single leg. So I'm like, oh man, I want to do more of this. And we're kind of seeing it now in competitive jiu-jitsu too, with people hitting cradles and things like that in jiu-jitsu. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that for me, it's just important for people to understand that just like with judo, you really can't do a literal translation of wrestling for jiu-jitsu, right? You have to understand that the reaction you get in grappling or in jiu-jitsu is much different than the reaction you would get in wrestling. So if you try to do a standard 3 takedown series in wrestling, the feed will always be a belly down feed from our opponent. He's always going to try to starfish and land belly down and to avoid getting his back to the mat. Where with jiu-jitsu, the opposite happens, And so me personally, I don't see a big advantage of getting a takedown if that takedown results in me inside of your closed guard. I basically went from a neutral position to a defensive position because while in your closed guard, I can only be defensive, right? My only offense is a product of defending your attacks and then passing your guard. And guard passing still is not an offensive action. It's a break from neutrality, right? And so it's really important we understand that, and we direct our wrestling or our judo towards a jiu-jitsu feed, you know. And so if you can do that, then it's immediately applicable. But that's the challenge. And so, you know, Zach Miller,
Mm-hmm.
he's one of my black belts. You guys spoke with him. His big thing is wrestling up. And I
Yep.
think that when you play with ideas like that of, you know, a big thing at our academy is we do a whole class based off of GTFO, right? And like, you know, that stands for, I don't know if I can say it here, but like, get the fuck up or get the fuck
Yeah,
out.
you're good. Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
And so, and so, you know, we will put you in a bad spot over and over and over again. And it is, you know, on these classes, it's less about the technique and more about just being a grown ass man and getting up, you know, and get to your feet and get out. And so, we use a lot of wrestling from our backs, wrestling from our feet, or wrestling from our knees, rather, getting out of bad spots, using wrestling transitions to get to a neutral position in a standing position, and then have the fight happen from there.
So do you feel drilling is undervalued in a lot of jiu-jitsu academies that you've seen or noticed with practitioners that you've traveled around the world and work with? Do you feel like I always hear about drilling is like probably the most important thing, and it sounds like you dedicate a whole class just to drilling.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. So I don't drill myself personally anything ever. And when I say that, I mean I will never do like a 10-step sequence repeatedly. You know, so I think that when I think of drilling, it's guys who are going to do, you know, like a knee cut pass, and they're going to do it with almost no resistance, and they're going to just kind of go through like what becomes kind of like a kata, right? Like you're just going to go through it, you reset, you go through it, you reset, you know, right? So I don't spend any time drilling at all. And so, but what I do is I go into every single role with an idea in my mind of like what I want to try to learn or what I want to try to implement into my game. And I allow that to fail over and over and over again. So I don't tell you what I'm trying to do. If you figure it out, that's fine. I'm trying to keep it a secret, but I'm also not going to announce it to you. I'm just going to try to find what I want to learn within the role. And as it fails, I have to process that data and then try again and try again and try again. And I think that for me, it gives me a much better understanding that two things happen there. I get a realistic reaction and a realistic action from the move I'm trying to do. And then two, it allows me to have my jiu-jitsu be more conceptual and not so like step by step by step. And I think that that's an important key there, because as we learn techniques, they should be, we as a coach, I have to teach you a series in a step-by-step process so that you can learn it that way. But when it comes time to implementation, it's your job as a student to decide which parts of that step work, or which part of that technique works best for that scenario that you're currently in, right? So for instance, if I have a submission that's 8 steps long, if I start at step 1,
I'm out.
exactly.
I'd be like, 8, let me get my notebook.
Yeah. But like I said, like when you first learn to do an armbar can be 8 steps, right? 8 separate actions. If I try to only start my arm bars from step 1, well, the odds of them completing to step 8 are very low. A guy's going to interrupt me whenever he can. And so it's my job to understand that this specific scenario that we're in feels like step 3, and I can start at step 3 and go 3 to 8, or I can start at step 7 and go 7, 8 and finish my technique. That gives me the opportunity to have a higher success rate, but it also allows me to fail and not feel like I invested a ton of work into a failed technique. So drilling can be important as long as it's done in a way that is productive and not just theatrics.
I like that a lot. I like drilling when it's like warming up for the class. I like drilling, but I definitely learn better if you just let me roll and try to work through it.
Yeah, in my eyes, to add on to that, for me, drilling, right, what you mentioned is like the step-by-step process. To me, that's more of like a practicing the technique. You know what I mean? Like that's like, hey, here goes the technique. Now break, you go do it with your partner.
Sure.
And in my eyes, when I think of drilling, I think of, hey, we're starting like for I was just talking about our half guard series. We were starting with, you're shooting for the single leg. They have a wizard. try to get out of it, ready to
Right.
go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that was kind of like what I see as drilling. But I do know people like you just mentioned where it's more of a kata. They're like, you're gonna start right here and only start right here. But it kind of goes to like positional sparring too, right? Like you're like little like start on their back and try to get out of it. And I think that's also really good too. But I guess that kind of goes into sparring as well, or into drilling as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that ultimately we have to, so I have to also understand that some students need to learn in a very step-by-step process, right? And I think that like my wife, for instance, she learns very systematically and she has to drill it and she has to go through and rep everything out or else she can't really implement it later on, So um, like everything with jujitsu, it's very personal, right? Like, I mean, and that's why I stuck with jujitsu for so long is because nobody ever told me exactly what to do. They gave me this idea, and ultimately, if you can implement it and make it work in your own way, then it's not wrong. So I think what happens a lot of times people come into the classroom and they expect to just like learn very like A to B, or like read a book and they can do jujitsu. And the reality is like, it's my job as a coach to give you ideas, but you have to get with your partner and figure out what makes it work for you and kind of figure out your own game. And everybody has to be an individual or else they're not going to really grow beyond just knowing techniques. And I see that a lot where we have, I've had students in the past that can demonstrate 100 techniques perfectly, but they can't roll to save their lives, because they never have the ability to understand that you're in a fight, you're in a match, you're in a grappling match, and there is no script, and things are not going to go as planned. And if you can't deviate from a plan, then you're doomed.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too because when it comes to technique, warm ups, all these ideas and concepts behind jujitsu, there's so many. I feel like there's not a lot of gray area with some people. It's like either drilling is 100% necessary or no, they have to practice technique for 1 hour straight and then we'll go into live spar. You know what I mean? Like I feel like everyone has their own opinion, and that's what makes jujitsu so unique in my eyes, right? Like if you go to like a taekwondo studio, they practice pretty much and do the same things from what I've seen. Oh, as you travel, right? It's a good or a good standard wherever you go. But when you go to like a jiu-jitsu academy, I mean, I've never been to one that does it the same exact way we do it, and we don't do anything special. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember when we were a couple years into this, we thought. Remember when we found out you couldn't roll at some gyms
Yeah.
if you were a white belt, and I was like, what? Like, how did they learn? I couldn't believe it because we'd been rolling from the start.
Yeah,
We'd
day
been in
one.
it for a couple years.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how I would learn if I couldn't roll.
I've also heard of people schools not allowing white belts to roll with white belts also because the safety hazards obviously that come along with two white belts like rams locking horns. You know what I mean? Do you have any rules in your academy that's like that?
No, I mean, we're quite the opposite. We, I want you guys rolling day one. We do heel hooks at white belt. All submissions are elite, or all submissions are allowed in my class. You can neck crank, you can wrist lock, you can ankle, you can heel hook. If I can get you to tap, then I'm giving you a thumbs up, So like, and that's just reality. But I think that like, it's important that so I always preface that with one big rule at my academy, right? And here's the rule. If you get hurt, it's always your fault. Always. There's only one exception, right? The one exception is you tap, I don't let go, and then it's my fault, right? But no matter what, besides that one exception, if you get hurt, it's your fault, right? Like, so if a guy's trying to pass your guard and he knees you in the eye, that's your fault, right? Like, our number one rule is keep ourselves safe. And so if I can't keep myself safe against a spazzy white belt, then I shouldn't be teaching jiu-jitsu, And so, and I say this because as a 140-pound dude, like, there are many things in a match that I would like to do to you, but I can't because the risk of you injuring me is too high, right? Like, not from a submission, but just from the violent act of a roll. Like, if I get a college wrestler and I sweep him, I know he's going to spring back into me, right? That spring back into me might break my arm. And so I've got to play this game of like, is it what's the action reaction look like, you know? And so as long as you communicate that with your students, and you can have them do whatever they want, because they know that it's their job to acknowledge that they are getting into a bad spot, and then they can play this game of, do I continue on with my defense or my escape, or do I tap out, right? Neither answer is right or wrong. um, Me personally, I let things go way too long. Like, both when I'm competing and when I'm rolling with friends, like, I want you to know that, like, if I tap out, like, you were gonna kill me, you know. And for me, there's no middle ground, right? And so, uh, but that comes from trust also, you know. And so, but yeah, I think that, like, the biggest hurdle we have with all of these ideas in jiu-jitsu is that, like, we don't talk about things. We don't have communication with our students. And so, we try to make communication, like, hugely important in my academy. You know, every class we're giving some kind of behind the scenes conversation, and not just getting into our role.
Okay, so what I figured what we'll jump in at is competing, especially since you just posted that reel about how you have that board of your top competitors in your school,
Yeah.
which I think is super cool. And actually, it kind of made me think, like, man, if our school would have done that, would I compete? Because that's a pretty cool idea, right? Everyone likes a little bit of camaraderie.
I think so.
So you obviously have competed in, I mean, literally everything that's probably jiu-jitsu related. I feel like your Instagram profile is like, you have to click a view more a couple times to see how many different things that you've competed in. How do you feel about competing for like the general population of your gym? Because we heard a crazy stat that 70% of martial artists never compete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how do you feel about competition?
Yeah, I think that, like, I don't know, man. I always look at it like this. If you enjoy playing basketball, right? You go to the basketball court on a Sunday, you play pickup games of basketball. You don't care if you get better at basketball. You're not trying to make the NBA. You're not even trying to do well. You're just having fun with your friends and playing basketball. Like, I think you should be able to do jiu-jitsu the same way, right? You should be able to go in there and just say, hey, you know what? It's a fun hobby for me. I don't really care if I'm getting better or not. Like, I love the time. I love the camaraderie. I love my team. And I like being here, right? So I always preface it by that. Like, you're completely okay, never competing, never even giving it 100% in practice. Like, just be a hobbyist. Like, that's totally cool, right? But I think that, like, if you want to really push yourself, and if you want to train hard in the academy, you really have to compete, right? Like, what competition does is it helps us to better separate our teammates from our competitors, right? If you don't compete, then you always go into practice fighting your friends, and then you don't have an outlet for, like, a real aggressive roll, right? Like, we roll pretty hard at my academy, and I tell my guys, like, hey, we're gonna roll hard today. But I still see the guys who end up injuring people in the academy, or they just get too aggressive. They tone themselves way down when they can go compete and then be able to, like, not roll with a friend, and, like, go full on and, like, really have an outlet for that. Then they come back to the academy, and it completely changes how they train, because now they have training partners that they are fixing errors in their game, they're fixing holes in their game, and then they're going to ultimately improve the jiu-jitsu at a faster rate because of it.
So, did you start competing in jiu-jitsu? Was it like a natural progression? Because, like you said, you did it after 3 weeks. Like, you're like, is that just because of your competitive mindset from, wrestling, gymnastics, and everything like that? Did you just have that, like, that inner desire to always test yourself?
Yeah, it was a really mixed thing. Where, like, when I competed at first event, when I wrestling is like 100% forward aggression, right? Like, it's just go, go, go. I'm trying to kill this dude. And, I've also competed in, like, skate competitions and, like, snowboard competitions and, like, gymnastics. And, like, I've been a competitor my whole life. Like, everything I've done, I've taken, like, to the extreme and, like, tested myself, like, in competition. But that first event in jiu-jitsu, I realized that, like, I didn't have, like, a kill mentality. Like, I didn't see red. I didn't want to go out and hurt anybody. It was kind of the opposite, where, like, I had my second or third match of the day was against like a young 18-year-old kid. And I vividly remember like looking at him in the middle of the match and just thinking to myself, he wants this way more than I do. Like, I just don't have it in me to like kill this guy, you know? And like, so I had to go back and then, you know, I competed once as a white belt. I competed once as a blue belt. I did very well, you know, as a blue belt in that one event. And then I really had no plans on ever competing again. And then we kind of decided that we were going to leave Oregon and move to Arizona. And I knew that in doing so, I would be opening an academy on my own. The academy I had in Oregon, I had a black belt co-owner. And so I had like the safety net of like opening an academy. And so when I opened my academy in Arizona, I knew I was going to be by myself. I was opening an academy in a town that had never had jiu-jitsu before. And so early into my purple belt, I knew this was going to happen. And so I thought, man, how do I give myself some legitimacy in the sport? And I've got to give somebody something they can Google and say, okay, who's this guy that's teaching jiu-jitsu in Fountain Hills? And so, you know, I got really lucky. I got connected with Chael Sonnen, and they put me on Submission Underground 2, which was headlined by John Jones and Dan Henderson. So mega event. That was my first pro grappling match. I was a purple belt for a couple of weeks, and I went and did that. And then they loved me, and they kept having me back on. And so that really was like the like the opening, like the door opening for me. Once I had a couple of Submission Undergrounds under my belt, then I got calls from Eddie Bravo, and then World Series of Fighting, and it kind of all fell together. But I really didn't have like this moment where I was like, man, I love competing. It was more like I have to compete just long enough to give myself some credibility, and then I could not compete, you know? And somewhere along the way, I learned to love it. And I started having a lot of fun competing. I didn't get nervous any longer. I was just having a good time. And, you know, now I'm kind of in this in-between zone where I'm getting paid to travel the world and teach jiu-jitsu. And I don't have to compete anymore. I still want to compete. I'm sure I will still. But if I get two phone calls the same day, and one's to go to Europe and teach, or the other one's to go to Mexico and get smashed in the face, I'm probably going to go to Europe and teach.
So we had a viewer question that he's looking. His name is Mike, and he's looking to start an academy, and someone that has a very successful academy. This would be a good thing to ask you. It's kind of a 3-part question. He started off with, how did you start your own gym? What startup capital was necessary, and what would you have done differently?
Yeah, so I got really lucky. You know, like I've had this habit of surrounding myself with really successful people who are much better humans than I am, and I've always kind of rode the curtails of all these people around me. And so I was literally a white belt or a new blue belt, and my academy was in the back of a Taekwondo school. And there was some tension there. The Jiu-Jitsu was doing better than Taekwondo, and that really irritated the Taekwondo master guy. He didn't like that his shit was failing and ours was crushing it, you know? And so we had a guy, his name's Ned. He's like 75 years old. He's a purple belt at the time. He's a black belt now. He was a very successful businessman, and he and I just had lunch one day, and I was like, hey, you know, like things aren't going well. We should open an academy. And we talked about it a little bit, and then we brought my black belt guy, my coach in, and the three of us partnered together. The black belt and myself both had $0. Like we had no money to invest, but I had all the time in the world. You know, like I've always been able to not really work, and so we said, hey, you know, if you front the capital, then we will pay it back in sweat equity. And so we had a couple, you know, hang-ups where all of our people were in a contract with the Taekwondo school. And so we ended up, it was a total of $20,000 for initial investment. And 12,000 of that 20,000 went to the Taekwondo school just to break everyone out of their contracts. Yeah. So that was a huge hit for us. But the reality is for $8,000, we were able to buy mats, rent a space, pay the first month's rent, and then open the business. You know, so for me, it's incredibly important that we always open an academy undersized and under budget, right? I have a good friend that opened an academy. He spent $50,000 on his initial build out, another $50,000 the first 2 years in just paying increased overhead and not enough students. So he took $100,000 loan out of his retirement to keep his academy afloat. But this same person couldn't roll paint on the wall. Like he hired out for everything, you know? So where me, like, you know, I worked briefly as an interior decorator. Like I have like design background. I've been building things my whole life. And so I could do everything myself. And so for $8,000, we ended up buying, I drove actually up to, is it Snohomish?
Yeah.
By you guys, I drove to Snohomish in the middle of winter because there was a like a CrossFit gym that wanted to do MMA that closed, or they wanted to transition back to just weightlifting and CrossFit, and they had a 30-foot by 30-foot wrestling mat that they were selling on Craigslist, and so I rented a trailer and drove like 12 hours in the snow to get there. It was crazy. It took me so long. It was so sketchy, and I got there and it was one 30-foot by 30-foot chunk, like not segments. It was just one big mat. And so I had to sit there with a box cutter and cut it in 3 sections and roll it up and put it in the trailer and drive it back, you know. But we ended up paying $800 for that, you know, and that was enough mass to cover the whole gym. The gym was only, I think, 800 square feet, you know, but
Wow.
I have a photograph. The first class we had 26 members, and 26 people and 800 square feet is crazy, you know? And so, you know, but what we did is we were part of an industrial complex. They had both offices and like warehouses for rent. We told the guy, hey, we want to rent an office for, you know, $800 for 800 square feet. But as soon as we're ready, we want to have the option to move into a warehouse and keep that same lease and just kind of move our shit across the hallway. And so we did 5 months in the 800 square foot like little unit, and then we moved over to a 2,400 square foot unit, and the gym is still there today.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then we ended up being about a $7,000 portion for each of the 3 partners. We paid that $7,000 back to Ned in about a year, 10 months to a year,
Wow.
and then we had our investment back, right? And so. I decided I was going to move, and so another year goes by, and I sold my third of the gym back to them, and I sold it for $20,000. And so I took $0, turned it into $7,000, and turned it into $20,000 in 24 months, and then that $20,000 paid for my current gym now.
So what would you have done differently in that whole scenario?
You know, I'm still learning this. I'm still making the same mistake. Is that I don't work well with others. That's just, I mean, it's funny, man. Like, I think that I had such a unique military experience because, you know, I was stationed in Michigan, and I was part of an MP unit, and out of like 300 soldiers there, only 3 of us stayed back for 2 deployments. And I literally spent my whole service in an office by myself, just punching paper, you know? So like, I never had like any camaraderie or no soldier brothers, nothing like that. And so, you know, whether that plays into it or if it's just part of who I am, I have a hard time working with other people. You know, I think that like I've always been a solo sport person. I've always done solo business ventures, and you know, working with partners can be really challenging. So that was hard for me. You know, having said that, I've got 2 partners at my current gym. You know, and I still probably would have said, if I wasn't traveling as much as I am now, I would have preferred to keep it a sole proprietorship for sure.
Well, it's good you know that, though, right? I mean, it's good to know exactly how you are. It's got to make it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I've been really good at my whole life is like, you know, I always do what I want to do, like, period. And I mean, I will help you out. I'll do anything for you, but I will absolutely always put myself first. So I think that it's an important trait that gets so frowned upon for some reason, of like this idea that like you can support yourself and get what you want out of life, but all of a sudden like you're a selfish asshole for doing it. Like, that's crazy.
Right? I totally get it. Totally get it.
Like, I put myself in a spot where I can help people all the time now, you know, like, because I'm selfish, I have an academy. That academy allows military vets and cops to come train for free, or, or guys who just can't afford it. Like, I can help them. I can give back because I put myself first, not in spite of it,
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. Hindsight 2020. Most people will be like, oh no, like you just mentioned, like you gotta help people along the way as much as you can. It's like, well, I don't know, man. Like I feel the same way. Like if it's detrimental to me succeeding, then how can I help someone in the long run?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it's not going to work out for me, then what's the whole point? Like
for sure,
Bro, it's like watching the country, right?
Yeah.
We give all that foreign aid money, and I'm like, Jesus, let's get our shit in order first before we keep giving billions everywhere else.
100%, man. And like,
Right.
but I go back to like my mom. My mom will give you, if you ask my mom for $5 and she has 3, she'll find a way to find 5. But she's been poor her whole life and she struggles all the time. And it's like, then you get dudes like, like Elon Musk, who was selfish and made his billions. That dude fucking gives away hundreds of millions of dollars a year in like aid, and like he actually helps people. So like,
Right.
so people want to bash on him for being a billionaire, but they overlook the fact that he's giving literally hundreds of millions of dollars to like charity every year. And like it's this like, we as Americans especially have this like short-sighted view of it, of like, I want to have that instant gratification of saying I helped, but like your instant help is meaningless as opposed to like a long-term like strategy that will actually benefit people.
Yeah, some kind of fundamental change would
Yeah,
be way better.
for sure, 100%. Yeah.
So I gotta ask, I watched some of your videos, man. You are super flexible. Are you in some yoga, or is that just like the gymnastics? You're still carrying that stuff?
It's weird, man. Like I've never done yoga, like not a single class, like not one class have I done yoga. And I don't even like stretch that much, really. Like I think that like just being a gymnast, like, the big emphasis in like men's gymnastics especially is like your strength throughout a large range of motion. Like you can't just be strong and you can't just be flexible. You got to be strong and flexible. So yeah, it's weird, man. I'm 41 years old. I can drop down to the splits. I can fold in half. I just have never felt like it's gone away. It's super weird. I also like,
What?
if I sit and try to stretch like on a mat, like I don't look flexible at all. And then if I'm rolling, I just relax my body and I'll just let the dude fucking put my foot behind my head. It doesn't bother me at all. So part of it's mental, part of it's like physical, and just knowing like what your body can do and knowing what your body's capable of doing and just allowing it to happen.
Well, I was super fucking jealous watching it. I was like, God damn, I can't, struggling to touch my toes. I got to pull on my gi pant leg and shit, get my feet up. It's like, damn. I wish my parents would have had me in some shit like that when I was younger.
It's funny,
So
man.
you mentioned that. Oh, go ahead.
It's funny that, I would never make, I have a 10-year-old son. I would never make him do any sport, but I'll tell you that I have been a successful athlete in every sport I've done because of my gymnastics foundation. Like, it's such a, like, just knowing how to keep I've been in motorcycle crashes. I've never broken a bone, never had any major injuries, never had surgery, and I think it all goes back to like knowing your body and like being physically fit and like strong enough to handle it. We often will wonder why we're getting so injured in jiu-jitsu, and it's because our bodies are fucking jello, and we got to be fit and like strong enough to handle the daily violence of just rolling, and so yeah, man, gymnastics was like just an incredible foundation for who I am. I thank my parents every day for that.
I saw on your not your TikTok, your Instagram that you're about 145 pounds. You said typically you're the smaller guy at your academy or when you roll with people like that. I saw something that it was a bigger gentleman, and he was talking about he doesn't roll differently with small people.
Yeah.
He's like small people should know how to deal with a larger person. How do you feel about a size discrepancy in jiu-jitsu? Do you feel that it's someone's more responsibility more than the others to ensure that they're both safe, or is it, hey, technique, you know what I mean?
No, I said before, man, I think that like number one goal of our number one responsibility is keeping ourselves safe at all times, right? So like, but I tell every big guy, I roll all over the world and I get massive dudes, and I'm like, don't roll for me, right? Like, I'm not going to go slower for your fat ass. Like, I'm not going to be like, right? Like, I'm not going to eliminate my attributes to suit you. So you can't eliminate your attributes to suit me. And so there are times when I'll say no to a role. You know, like there are certain people, certain bodies that like I don't think either of us are going to benefit from the role, right? Like he's going to be awkward around me and maybe try to go too light or just going to smash. I'm going to be too quick for him and it's going to be just like a non-productive role, you know? And so I'm completely okay with saying no to a round. But I definitely tell every big guy I see and roll with, like, don't be nice to me, you know? Like, do not like go easy on me. Don't be light on me. It's my job to learn how to deal with it, you know? The caveat is, and this goes for all size people, if I give you extreme pressure with no way to escape the pressure, then I'm an asshole, right? Meaning like if I go knee on belly and my only goal is to drive you straight down into the mat, then I'm an asshole, right? But if I give you directed pressure from knee on belly to get a response out of you, and that response allows you to deviate from the immediate threat, and I can utilize that deviation, then it's good jiu-jitsu, right? So like just doing shoulder pressure into somebody's chin for no reason other than to cause pain, you're an asshole, right? But if I give you shoulder pressure and you turn away from me to give me back exposure, then that's productive pressure that I encourage. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love how everyone always goes to knee on belly because everyone, like some people online, like knee on belly's not that bad. I'm like, bullshit, man. Like that shit is terrible, man.
Something needs to move.
Yeah, right. But speaking of big guys, John, what's going on now in the world of sports?
Ooh, football is back. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field. And your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Oh. Football may be rough, but your balls don't care, as long as you're Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code ETP20.
That's right. And at quarterback, we got the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer and a wily vet who makes sure that the unit is running smooth and scoring nonstop. Jesus, man, this stuff is so funny. With proprietary advanced skin-safe technology, the lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the balls. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue.
You know what made Tom Brady great? Go ahead. What'd you say?
I was going to say, I got to tell you guys, speaking of Manscaped, I was watching your podcast. On Thursday, I had a vasectomy, and because of you, I bought that lawnmower. And my urologist gave me a big old high five, and he said, "Man, you are Manscaped." So you guys are selling that shit.
See, that's just legit. See, those that use it, they're like, it is good. You got to get it.
You know what? Fuck this. That's the end of the ad.
Yeah,
you know,
that was it.
Let's go ahead and just say this has got a Super Bowl winning roster. Don't take my words for it. Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with code ETP20. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use code ETP20. Manscaped for turning your players into an MVP. Oh my God, that was the best one I've ever done.
Good job.
Yeah. Okay, well, now we'll go back to the actual seriousness. So you just recently did that 6-week trip through Europe, right? And I kind of wanted to get your point of view on the differences between people in other countries as practitioners and then practitioners in America. Do you feel there is a difference? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a substantial difference. I mean, I did that last trip was 6 weeks. It was 10 different countries, 12 seminars. So I get to meet a lot of different people, all walks of life. And, you know, what really surprised me, and I was super ignorant to this, is Lucha Libre is massive in Europe. And first thing I thought was Lucha Libre. And I'm like, cool, they're just Mexican wrestlers. But no, it's like, it's Lucha Libre, right? And so you'd have these guys who were Lucha Libre brown belts, but a jiu-jitsu white belt. And they're like fucking great, you know? And so, so yeah, it's a much different style. I think that from what I found in Europe, it's a very defensive style where like Americans are pretty offensive. I think we can see that through our culture altogether. But like we're more attacking in the rounds, where most of the Europeans that I roll with have a very strong defensive foundation. and that really is like where they peak, you know. I think the overall level is a little bit less than what we have in the States. Having said that, I think that like the top 5% of the guys who are grappling in Europe are like right there with all of our guys. You know, there's a big stretch between the best guys and the average guys.
So, where do you prefer to do your seminars when you do the BJJ Globetrotters? Do you like staying in America, or do you like the 6 week long trips? Because I mean, like you mentioned, like if you didn't travel so much, you could have a more presence in your school.
Yeah, I think that like I grew up so poor, and I grew up in like a small small place, and like so for me, even the thought of having a passport was like unheard of, and so I'm still riding the high of like saying I'm going to Europe, and regardless of like what the quality of instruction or the gyms gyms are a little bit less done up than they are in the States. It's just, for me, it's just so much fun to travel and like see all these places I haven't seen before. I'm just lucky enough that like grappling gets to take me there, so I still like to teach here in the US, but I've had a great reception in Europe, and the places have just been beautiful, so I'm still loving it.
What was the catalyst in your life that made it to where you can now do what you do as in your academy and life and whatnot? Where was the turning point for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like like everything else, like life is always a product of like our experiences and like what we can have, and what we can put together at any given time. So I had this really, this is kind of a reoccurring theme in my life where things just happen at the right time for me. And I got linked up with the BJJ Globetrotters, and I did their camp in Arizona. It's a fantastic group of people. They host jiu-jitsu camps all over the world, and they're incredibly fun, like super good time. And Christian, the guy who runs it, he just, I guess, liked me and invited me to come to more camps in Europe. And so it was a big investment in myself because they don't cover travel or anything. And so, but it's a giant networking platform. And so I would go to Germany, and there'd be, 250 students there. We're teaching a seminar to 250 people. And when I would leave, I'd get, 30 messages from guys who, a lot of black belts come to these. Maybe they have their own academy somewhere in Europe and say, hey, will you come out and do a seminar? And so the first couple of trips, they were pretty, costly on my side. And after that, now when I travel, I'll do 1 or 2 camps, but I'll do, a dozen seminars from people that I met at the camp, So it's an investment in yourself. So meeting up with the Globetrotters was like life changing. And then on top of that, I had a guy join my academy like 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and he works for American Airlines. And he was like, hey, I can get you cheap flights,
nice.
And so I'm flying round trip to Europe for like $400. And
wow.
Yeah. And I'm usually flying business class or first class. So it's like great flights. And so I trade him private lessons for flights. So it was just this crazy scenario in which like I sent a random email to Christian. Funny story. I saw a post from somebody on Facebook. I don't use Facebook very often, so this story could be totally inaccurate. But the way I remember it is I saw a post and they were saying, hey, we're looking for instructors for our Arizona camp. I'm like, hey, I live in Arizona. I'll do that. And so I emailed Christian. It was like, support@globetrotters.com. Like, I didn't know Christian. I didn't know who they were at all. I said, hey, here's my resume. Here's what I've done. I live in Arizona. I'd be happy to coach at your camp. He replied back and he said, no, thank you. And and he was cool though, because he was like, you know what? We only hire people we know. And like, I thought that was incredible. Like, I thought that was like super respectful of like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't know you, man. Like, I'm not going to let some random person come into my group of people and start teaching them, And so I immediately liked him. And then like 2 or 3 days go by and he messaged me on Messenger, and he was like, hey, do you want to do like a quick interview? And we just talked for like a half an hour, like not even about jiu-jitsu, just kind of bullshit. And he was like, all right, you're in. And then it was crazy because like I had to do combat jiu-jitsu in Cancun. I landed back at home on Monday. The camp started Monday. And my eye, I still had like glue holding my eye together. I couldn't see out of my left eye at all. Like, I was a mess. So I went there and I'm like at this camp. And then I had to go to do Submission Underground on Friday. So I was like doing this camp between two big shows. And I really just kind of half-assed the camp. Like, I wasn't all into it. I was really scared that my eye was going to come open because it was glued shut. And then they wouldn't let me compete on Saturday, you know, in Portland. And so I was like super careful, and I'm like, man, I just totally fucked this up, you know, like it wasn't my best showing. And whatever I did, it worked, because he sent me an email and he's like, hey, you know, where else do you want to go? And I'm like, I'll go everywhere. And so I did like 13 camps in like 15 months. So just like stayed crazy busy and went after it, you know? So I think that just being, you know, it's easy to say I get lucky and I'm in the right place at the right time, but like, that's cool when it happens once, but something I'm doing is good because it's happened my whole life. You know, I've just been able to capitalize on like good connections with people, and my sets of skills have lined up with what was necessary in that moment, and it's just been fucking great.
Well, you know, a part of that too is accepting that opportunity. You know, a lot of people, you'll get those opportunities in life, but it's a big commitment to just take that, right? Because you're comfortable with what you know. So seizing that opportunity is a big part of that.
Man, I've never been afraid to say yes. You know, like I say yes to everything, and like if I fail, like I'm completely comfortable failing. You know, like it's never bothered me. I mean, I was building motorcycles and working on classic cars, and like my friends would ask me how I learned it, and I'm like, I fucked everything up, and like, you know, like I got on YouTube and I fixed it, no big deal, you know, or I fucked it up so bad that I went to a mechanic and they fixed it for me, but like I tried, you know, like I'm gonna say yes to every opportunity, man. Like it's crazy. I feel like I'm 41 years old. I'm like halfway through this thing, and for all we know, this is all we get. Like we get one trip, and like I just couldn't imagine looking back and being like, man, I was so cautious, you know? I'd much rather say I fucked everything up. I ruined everything. I tried, and like, I just couldn't do the right things, but I tried them all, you know?
Yeah, you bring it up failure, and I watched like a lot of YouTube videos, like John was mentioning earlier, and on there you have that what is it, EBI, where you lost in overtime that you put on your YouTube channel. I thought that was so interesting to me because a lot of people don't want to put their failures out there, especially self-publishing. Sure. You know what I mean? Like hey, this is I lost this. It's okay, but it was a good match. You know what I mean? Why do you think people are so afraid of showing nothing but successes? You know what I mean? Like we have like such this like stigma in social media, and you know, Instagram is always the hottest techniques or always the best looking things. You know what I mean? And like people are afraid to admit, like you just said, like I fucked up. Like I did horrible. You know what I mean? Why do you think that is?
I think people are just weak, like mentally. I think that like, you know, if you let any doubt creep in, people will let it like consume them. You know, we're like, dude, I fight good guys. Like, I'm not out there like losing at Naga. You know, like it's not you know, and if I do, like the dude fucking he bested me. Like, I look at it, man, like, could you imagine if like Michael Jordan loses a basketball game, one in like 116 he played in a season, and like he cried about it and like bitched and moaned? Like, no, you gotta just like, all right, I made mistakes. You know, we can do better the next time. And so it's like, dude, I'm stoked. Like, I'm so happy about life that like, man, I'm so happy for the guys that beat me. Like, this is cool. Like, that was fucking rad. You beat me. Like, not saying that like I'm hard to beat, but I'm just saying like I'm genuinely happy for them. You know, like David Weintraub smashed my face in, you know, and like I was smiling and laughing the whole time. And like, I still like, if he makes a post on Instagram, I like his post, man. Like I drop into his DMs all the time. Like, I want to see him blow up. I want to see him succeed. And so like, I just don't know how that, I don't see how me having a negative experience from losing benefits anything, you know, like it's just something that happened. Like especially when you're fighting like professionally, you know, when you're grappling on the professional scene, like everybody's good. Everybody's amazing, you know, and like everybody loses. And so, watch me lose. It's totally cool. Like, I promise you, I'm smiling the whole time. Like, Man, I'm so lucky to be doing this. I started this so late in life, and like to get the opportunity to go and have matches on Fight Pass and have matches on Flow Grappling, like that's crazy, you know? So I'm not saying I'm like just happy to be a part of it. Like I still want to win, but sometimes you just lose, and it's not the end of the world.
Looking back at like how far you've came, and like you've mentioned it multiple times, you know, you grew up poor and whatnot. Like looking back at where you started to where you are now, what does that feel like?
It's cool, man. I mean, like, it's funny. Like, I have a Rolex, right? I wear it every day. My watch costs more than the house I grew up in, and like, that's so surreal that like, I came from a spot where like, I have so many friends who just never made it out, you know, and like, it wasn't easy for me. Like joining the military was scary, and then even like, you know, joining the army isn't a success route at all. Like I got out and I was dumped right back into society, and like, what the fuck do I do now? You know, but I picked up and I left everybody I knew. I cut my entire family off. I don't talk to anyone, but you know, my mom, and that's it. And like, cause they're all just shitty people. And so, you know, I'll never lose that. Like I said, I love that I can look down at something so silly as like this frivolous watch and like know that like that literally could buy the house I grew up in. And like I made it out of there, and now I just casually wear it, you know? Like it was not easy. I spent, you know, a long time like homeless and living on friends' couches and like just bouncing around and trying to find my way in life. And I fail way more than I succeed. But I just couldn't imagine like settling and like just letting it be, you know? Like my friends aren't happy. Like my high school friends are not happy with their lives. And but they're not uncomfortable enough to make giant changes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people are so afraid of failing, like we talked about earlier. They just like they just stick with what's comfortable, like you mentioned, John.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, we don't control a lot in life. A lot of it we don't control. The one thing we can control is the way we respond to things, especially as they happen. So you just got to do it. It's the only thing we really can't control.
And it's, you know, it's relatively impossible to have dramatic change without dire consequences, right? And like, I think that like, it says so much about like us as a culture, like us as a country too, where like, we would be like, just uncomfortable enough to like be stable, you know, but like it's a constant settling. It's a constant like, yeah, things could be better, but they probably get worse before they got better, and people aren't willing to take that risk, you know? So I said, fuck that, man. Like I can't live like this. And I just took risks.
So on our show, we like to ask a question because we kind of try to aim for this podcast to have ideas and topics that kind of are relatable to brand new practitioners. And what our question we always ask is, if you could give one piece of advice to a brand new white belt, what would it be?
Man, I think just, you know, again, the silly, like the easy answer is just enjoy it, right? Like have fun. And I will tell you that the guys who are the most successful, guys and girls, are the ones that come in and they're not shy about it. Like they just get after it. You know, they're not timid. They're not afraid to get like embarrassed out there. They just get after it. You know, like those are the people who have the most success. And then like, I guess after getting through that, my biggest point of advice is every class that we teach should be received two ways, right? So like if I'm teaching you how to do an armbar from guard, a good student is going to learn how to do that armbar, but they're also going to learn how to defend the armbar, right? So if I teach you all the things you need to accomplish a perfect armbar, you should be receiving the defensive end too, getting two classes for one.
Yeah, that's a lot of people will tell us, you know, just enjoy it, but it's their ideas of what it looks like to enjoy it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, some people are like enjoy it by competing, or enjoy it by setting goals and hitting those goals, or going with friends, or you know what I mean, like lowering your expectations of what that you're actually wanting to do in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Because nothing's worse than setting a high bar for yourself, and then you never hit that bar because you're just expecting too much of your own journey. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to sit down and be like for me, I have 3 kids, 2 under 2. Right, a full-time job, a 401k. You know what I mean? I work for the government, so I have long hours sometimes. And so for me, my days of being the killer in class, super athletic, are gone. Like, and I'm okay with that. I have to change my goals, unfortunately. It doesn't mean I have any less fun in jiu-jitsu, but it's just now I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to show up and I'm going to do the technique and I'm going to have fun. And if I get tapped by my friends, then hey, it happens, man. Like, it's okay for me. It doesn't bother me anymore. At first, though, it did bother me because I felt like I was going down. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, fuck, man, my skills are sucking lately. And it's just different, man. If I can barely make it 2 times a week, then I have to understand that my skill's gonna be that of a person that can barely make it 2 times a week. I'm not gonna be, you know, the 25-year-old kid that goes 4 or 5 times a week and studies tape and everything like that. And I just it took me a little bit to realize that has to be my enjoyment part. You know what I mean?
It's funny, man. Like, I look back at like skating for me. You know, I was able to travel the country and like skate professionally. And the issue I had was I was the guy who would find the craziest, gnarliest thing and jump off of it, right? Like, I would do only stunts, like just bonkers things. That's what I love to do. Other guys would have an amazing session on like a little tiny, like, you know, 4-inch tall rail. And they could do like the most technical, like beautiful tricks ever on that rail. And I hated it. Like, I just never found the love of that, right? And so the problem is, now that I'm, you know, 40 years old, I can't do the stunts anymore, right? Like, I'm broken. And so I've lost all love for skating because the thing I was good at, the thing I loved the most, I can no longer do, right? And that like is a direct relation to jiu-jitsu. Like, if all you can do is smash, there's going to be a time when you're too old to smash. And then you're going to fall out of love because you never loved the technique and never loved like the art of it, right? Like, it was just about like hucking yourself on the biggest, you know, rail and being cool on TV. Like, so learning to understand that, like, there's going to be different levels of enjoyment, like you said, and there's different outcomes for enjoyment. The guys who figure that out are going to have the longest career for sure.
Well, Mike, this was a great conversation. John, you got anything else?
I don't. I'm loving the background. I'm still jealous. I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, you hear that seagull in the background? We were having that good moment. I was like, man, no. Enjoy that weather.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's gonna make some great Instagram reels. It's gonna have like, you know, the motivating music in the background as like he's sitting on the beach.
It's gonna like scroll down right here. It's like
I need the sun to glint off the Rolex a little bit. That's what I was really looking for. Yes. There we go. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, if people want to follow you and check out your YouTube and see your whole journey and everything like that, your beautiful academy, by the way, I forgot to say, I freaking love the jiu-jitsu on the wall. I think that is like pure classic and like great looking. So where can people follow you at?
Instagram is my primary source. That's going to be just Michael Currier BJJ on Instagram. It's also the exact same Michael Currier BJJ on YouTube. I'm terrible about posting YouTube stuff, but I do occasionally. I generally just stick to Instagram.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So, what's your academy? If people want to check out your academy.
Yeah, it's called Impact Jiu-Jitsu in Fountain Hills.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So that's everything we have today, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching at home. And remember, no oil checks here. All right, guys. Thanks.